Welcome to our November and December CoachCast. Our topic this month is small group instruction and how we use this structure to support our students and their learning needs in our classrooms. Today we're joined at Spalding with Stephanie Buffa, second grade, and thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome.
Yay.
So I'm joined today by Sarah Cross, an ESL teacher from Prairie Trail.
Hello, I'm here today with a first grade teacher from Spalding School. This is Nita Saki.
Can you please start with your drink review?
Oh, I picked the pink drink because it's pink, pretty, and delicious, and there's tons of sugar. So that's always a plus.
So I have a almond milk flat white with a little hint of agave in there, so it's like a right amount of sweetness in it, so it's delicious.
This is a caramel macchiato with almond milk. It's very tasty. Thank you very much. I have plenty of caffeine now to make it through my Thursday.
We'd like to start with just hearing a little bit about how you use small group instruction, like big picture in your classroom.
I use small group a lot, and I use it more this year for reading. However, in the past I've used it for multiple things such as math groups. I have done some SEL. If there's been issues on the playground or something like that, I'll pull a small group of students and work on something. And then I've also, and just for reading is a big thing that I use it for. And I believe that doing small group as much as you can and consistently is super beneficial, just because you are working with just those kids at that point and they get just you, they get your full attention, and you can work specifically with those students to help them meet whatever their individual goal is.
I like to start out with some sort of question of the day or joke or quote that sort of gets us talking, builds background. For example, when the fifth graders were doing persuasive writing about whether or not we should get paid for chores, my question of the day was simply, do you do any chores at home? Do you get paid? Just kind of get us excited about the topic without knowing it. And then I will present my objectives and the standards that we're working on, give the lesson, like a we do together, you do, and a bit of a review. What I found helpful this year is doing running slides per grade level. I used to have, 14 different slides going on, and then every week I would start over, and I really find that having a running slide for my grade level is helpful, and then I can kind of keep moving that objective slide back up to the front, so it keeps it in front of them and in front of me until we've accomplished it and moved on.
So my goal was to focus on the kids know the expectations of what it looks like during small group instruction time. So like the right amount of noise level, how they're going to move around the classroom, and how they can interrupt me during small group instruction time. We just practice those routines in the classroom. And slowly I started pulling on the informal groups, so they started looking how it looks like when I'm working with a small group and how they're going to follow the expectations with that. So I do use champs for that one, and I use slides to do the transition. So they have the sign up there that shows them that they are moving into the reading time, and they have to get into gym shoes, which we use later. We have to use it for gym time later on. Then I champ it out for them so they know the expectations of what the expectations are during that time. And I have this chart up there for them, and we refer it to real quick for independent reading, which kind of lays out the expectation at that independent reading time for them. And they get their baskets and they get to reading. Then we have the slides up here. When I tell them to switch, I use my clicker so I don't have to keep moving. And they just know when I say switch it, they put their baskets back and they move back to I ready reading. And then it's just the timer also is built in there. So when the timer goes off, it kind of helps me also to stay on task. With IXL, I usually put the weekly lessons for them in there, so they just know if they finished one, they can move on to the next one. And then the RAS kids up there too. So all the resources that we have, sometimes we switch around, sometimes we get to two. It's just still a work in progress. But they still use the slides through that. I try to keep my small group instruction simple, the planning process simple. I have all my supplies here ready to go, so I can do more on-spot teaching. I can pull out my sound mat or the reading books that were given to me as a great resource by our reading specialist, Annette Oz. So I think all these slide building has come with a lot of collaboration and working together and sharing with the team. So I think especially as a second year teacher, all this support and all this collaboration helps me be successful too.
That's great, and I love that you have the built-in timers. I bet that takes one more thing off of your plate, keeping track of time.
Yes, yeah. Because
And-
the kids usually tell, oh, the timer is about to go off, and they just kind of know that they're going to switch.
Yeah, and it was evident when I was in your room earlier that the kids knew exactly what to do. The systems that you and your team have collaborated about
Right.
are really working.
Right. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you for talking with us today.
Thank you. Yes.
And how do you gather some evidence for what their goals could be?
I use a variety of different things, but mostly I'll use some sort of informal assessment or an actual assessment. So if I were going to do groups for math, I would give them a quick pre-quiz to see what they know, if they can do the strategy, and then kind of just go from there. And I've grouped kids based off of, these kids have like really strong number sense and they just need to work on the strategy. Or these kids really don't know what they don't understand how numbers build, and maybe they need to work more with the based on blocks. That's like more for math.
How do you differentiate in your small groups?
So even though I have them based on access scores, I do like to look at their beginning of the year iReady scores and kind of get a Lexile level. I have other ways, like I've done a Words Their Way test to see where they are in phonics. I have a group of 4 third graders, and 2 of them are reading more at a second grade level, 1 at a first grade, and 1 at a kindergarten level. So sometimes even within my small groups, I like to do larger lessons with all of them, maybe 3 days a week, and then 2 days a week break it up by their guided reading level. And then even if I'm reading with those 2 kids, having the other 2 kids on RAS, Learning A to Z, because that has a great resource to have them have level books at their own level. And then I like to check the comprehension questions that they take at the end. So even if I'm not reading with them, there's still some sort of accountability that whether I should move them up or keep them where they're at to their current level.
It sounds like your groups are flexible. Like kids may come into one group and then they could move into another group. Can you talk a little bit how you identify different goals or objectives with your groups?
So in a small group, one of the things that I do is after I figure out what their specific goals are, if they have to look all the way through the word to figure out what the word is, or they have to do something with vocabulary, or if they have to comprehend, what I do is I make bookmarks. And I got this idea from Karen Wood, which is the reading teacher here at Spalding. And so we have like a bookmark, and we'll put their goal on the bookmark. And so if it's to look through all the word, we'll kind of put that on there. If it's to comprehend, I'll put like a stop sign and say, "What did you read?" Just something like that. And all that basically is to remind the kids to stop when they're reading and to think about what they read. And so oftentimes in small group, if we're reading, a book like we're reading, I will kind of listen in as he's reading, and then I'll say, when he gets to the end of the page, I'll say, "Oh, we're going to stop. What did you just read?" And I'll ask him to tell me what he just read. And if he can't tell me, I don't tell him. I just say, "Oh, well, how can we solve that?" And then, we kind of talk about, "Oh, well, then we need to reread." So he has to go back and then reread again. And eventually I think it's like so tedious that they start to really get it in their brain that if I figure out what I'm reading now, I don't have to do it again.
Well, and it sounds like you get to have a really powerful one-on-one conversation with them, and they get to know exactly what to do and how to fix it because you've had that small group interaction.
That's the benefit of the bookmark, is that it constantly reminds them of what they're working on.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I have that bookmark in front of them, oftentimes I'll like go quickly, "Okay, what's the goal what you're working on when you're reading? What's your goal that you're working on when you're reading?" And so when I listen in and I see that his goal is to comprehend, I'll say, "Okay, so we are working on comprehension. We need to stop after this page and we need to think, what did I just read?" So if we can answer that question, then we're ready to move on and read the next page. And kind of then I can have an idea of where these kids are. Depending on if they need vocabulary help or if they need fluency practice, I may sometimes switch up the groups and just work on the vocab kids and like really talk about how to solve for an unknown word and things like that. But usually I typically, even if it's not their specific skill, I'll still do it with the group just because I feel like even if it's not their skill yet, it's something that they can pick up on and learn, even if it's not their specific strategy.
That's great. I mean, and it also just sounds like they're getting such good wraparound instruction to think about like what to do with you, how to practice with you, and then they can work on it at their seats on their own.
And they hear what the other kid's strategy is or what their goal is when we're talking about it in a group. And so not only do they hear that that kid is working on it, but then it almost like gets in their brain like, ooh, I can use that strategy that they're doing. And then they kind of use that sometimes themselves if they get stuck on a word.
So what's one piece of advice you would give teachers that are starting small groups or have started small groups, but some advice that has really helped you? That would
I
help
think
them?
that just getting started is sometimes most difficult, and people try to wait to find that perfect reading level or that perfect activity, that getting your kids used to rotating, used to being with you and being independent, that it's just a place of getting started and you can always adjust as needed. I really like seeing my kids in small groups because I can see, what errors they're making right in front of me. And so I just think that getting started, give it a try. It's worth it.
Thanks.
So what's one piece of advice for starting small groups that you would recommend?
Sometimes the best thing is just to start small. I would say the biggest thing to do is first learn what your students can do. Listen to your kids read. If they have something in common or something similar, then you can kind of start to make your groups of like kind of where they're reading, what they could possibly read together, or what they need to work on together. And then each day or each week even, you just start trying to do something new. Maybe you work on words a little bit with them. Like maybe you work on their spelling words and then you send them back. Maybe then you can start to work on, we'll do like maybe 1 or 2 words and now we can start reading this passage together. And again, the thing about guided groups is that they're supposed to be something that can move, fluctuate, change. So if you make a mistake and you put the kid in the wrong group, then you just change the kid and you change the group. So it's not a big deal. So you just it's kind of like the kids are super easy too. Like they understand where you're making changes. So like, I think I'm going to try you in this group today. I want to see how you do. And then they're kind of excited to try a different group. So just start small and just get at it.
And be flexible in your thinking.
Be flexible in your thinking and don't be afraid to ask for help. Ask somebody like you or your fellow teachers to help you with what to do.
Thanks. Thank you so much for your time
You're
today.
welcome.
Thanks for tuning in to our Coaches Cast this month. Next month, our topic is on maintaining community after break. And our question for a school-appropriate drink is...
What's an idea from the CoachCast you'd like to try or use with students? Thanks for your time.